Hello people of the internet, it's Samantha, and if you're new here on my channel, I usually talk about Japanese movies, dramas, entertainment. Sometimes I tap into other Asian pop culture topics as well. And for today's video, let's talk about something that I've actually binged over the holidays. And I was just watching some content related to this last night, and that's the reason why I ended up making a video. Initially, I had no plans to make a video about this because there's just so many conversations happening about this particular work. I just didn't want to like dip my toes into that, but I don't know, I just feel like, let's sit down, talk about it, because I actually found some of the content that they're producing to promote this very, very interesting. I'm talking about the Oshi No Ko live action. Now, Oshi No Ko, I've made a video about this, I think, a couple of months ago when I started watching the anime, but I only talked about season 1, some first impressions about it, some thoughts about it. Now, if you've seen content here on my channel, I'm also an idol fan, but at the same time, I know there's a difference in terms of dynamic of being a male idol fan versus a female idol fan. And there's a lot of discourse going around that as well. And I know that a lot of people aren't exactly like the biggest fan of the series. They have thoughts about its portrayal of the entertainment industry, the female idol industry, all these other things. And as always here on my channel, as much as I try to be critical on some parts of, the series and the movies that I watch, I also consider entertainment value a lot and whether or not it brings that to the table whenever I'm watching something. So something doesn't necessarily have to be like the best work out there for me to recommend it, as long as personally I find it entertaining and I feel like other people might find it entertaining as well. So that's usually our benchmarks here on this channel. And I remember talking about, like, in that particular Oshi No Ko video that I did, that it did raise some interesting points in terms of the entertainment industry in general. I'm not saying that it's 100% true, because again, with fiction, it usually exaggerates or like bases itself off of some facts. But again, since it is fiction, it doesn't necessarily reflect the truth 100%. And with this one, obviously, like, there might be, again, some overlaps with, like the real idol industry, but it doesn't speak true 100% to what it actually is. But from my perspective, it opens a very curious and interesting conversation about artists also being human and how they project themselves on camera, and how fans are receptive of that, and what it is within the industry, and some darker truths to it that may be exaggerated for storytelling purposes. That's where the debate about the series and the discourse about this series is centered on, is because, again, a lot of idol fans don't necessarily agree with the portrayals or just the narrative of it. They feel like some of it could have, like, there's just a lot there. And again, in my opinion, like, there is a way to kind of like relate to the narrative and understand what it's trying to say, while also remembering that it is a work of fiction and there's definitely room to exaggerate and just have a little bit of creative freedom into it. And I understand that even with that, it doesn't come across to some audiences as that. And it might reflect, like, for people who are uninformed, then it might kind of like give a different impression, because this is how this supposed industry in practice is being portrayed. But I think it all boils down to being more responsible viewers, and that's just how fiction has always been about. I feel like, all of these factors are very important in terms of discussing, Oshi No Ko and the live action adaptation. And another thing that I want to point out about this is that obviously there are some things and I usually say this when it comes to works that are from anime or manga that is converted into live action, there are elements that seriously wouldn't translate depending on, like the narrative. Like, for example, there are some works that wouldn't appear as colorful or whatever, and I usually don't care much about that. It really depends on like portrayals and the way that the story is presented. So again, just putting it out there. um but I think for this one, so I saw a lot of discourse with regard to how the Oshi no Ko manga ended. And some people are saying it's shit. Again, I didn't read it. And so, but when I saw it, I feel like there's definitely a lot to improve on, or they could have like gone through on different kind of like ways and how to go about it. Some people said that the ending makes sense, and again, it's like this discussion on the Attack on Titan ending all over again. Endings are really hard, and this is coming from me as a fellow creative. It's hard to like do that, and sometimes endings just suck in general, no matter how good something is, and I kind of like get that. um, the author and the illustrator for this one is similar, are the ones from Kaguya-sama and also Scum's Wish. And for Akasaka Aka, I love Kaguya-sama. I find it really, really funny. But I'm a fan of tension romances, and that's the reason why I found it really interesting, but not how it ended, because I'm not a huge fan of when characters who initially are really on the outs when it comes to romance get together and they get really cheesy. That's just not for me. But that's the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of like how things were with the Kaguya-sama ending. Scum's Wish is, I love the art for that. It's just a story that I couldn't get on board with. But I know that, it has a lot of drama in it as well. And so knowing that, jumping into Oshi No Ko, it was interesting knowing like the influences of who the creators are and how the story came to be. So yeah. Now, actually diving into Oshi No Ko and live action, I'm gonna start with like a brief run through of the cast. So Sakurai Kaito plays Aqua. I just recently learned this, and I've seen him in other works prior to this, but I've recently just learned that he's the son of Mr. Children's vocalist. So that's interesting. Interesting that he's a nepo baby, but at the same time, like, I appreciated the way that he portrayed Aqua in the series, and we'll dive into that a little bit more later. Saito Asaka plays the iconic Hoshino Ai. Now, she's also like, she graduated from being an idol, but she has an idol background, being a part of Nojizaka 46's first generation, I believe. And I've been seeing her in a lot of different dramas last year. Specifically, my favorite would be Layo no Kakurega. Absolutely love that. I plan to make a video about that, but I'm not sure if I would be able to. But I absolutely love that drama. It's on Netflix. I suggest you watch it. I think that she has a knack for acting, so that's cool. There's Saito Nagisa, who plays Ruby. I find this girl really pretty. I feel like how she nails Ruby's kind of like very, I don't know, like spunky-ish personality that's just very, there's a kind of naiveness to her character, the way that she portrays it, but when she flicks through that kind of like emotion, I don't know, and she's also very pretty, and I really like that. And then there's also Ano, who is also a real life artist who plays the role of Memcho, and I think she nails Memcho so much based off of, the anime, which is really cool. There's Kayashima Mizuki as Kurokawa Akane. Now, for her, I know that a lot of people are having mixed feelings about her as Akane. I personally think that she's very beautiful. Um, and she kind of like nails Akane's more kind of like anxious side, but I wish I could have seen a lot more layers to her portrayal, because Akane is also kind of like a complex character, the way that she kind of like flips this persona whenever she needs to embody someone as an actress. And I feel like that was something that was lacking in Kayashima-san's portrayal. And then last but not the least is Haru Nanoka, who I feel like is everyone's kind of like favorite as Arimakana. I know that like I'm an Arimakana fan from the anime, but I really like her. I first saw her and she stood out to me even then. I saw her in Night Doctor years back. She played Kishi's little sister in that drama. And for some reason, like she stood out to me not just because she has a very cute face, but I know there's just something about her that really reels you in. She has that charisma on screen. And it played out really well because that's what Ari Makana's character is supposedly about. Like she has this aura that she has a very tsundere type of character, but at the same time, like she doesn't know her own, because of her own insecurities and background, she doesn't know that she's a very captivating person as an idol, more so as an actress. And I feel like she nailed it so well. Now overall, just jumping into that initial cast, I think that they really nailed their parts really well, aside from again my comment on the portrayal of Akane, but it's not that bad, I would say. um I think I am really bad with names. I'm so sorry to have to refer to my, I think Aqua's portrayal, Kaito nailed it in such a way that he definitely has this kind of like mysterious demeanor, very kind of like cool and collected demeanor to him. But if he switches it up to somewhat very light, and you know how it is with Aqua and his kind of like twisted personality, how he switches things up a bit sometimes, it still works. And again, I think Nanoka is the standout from this entire cast. I think every single person who I've seen comment on the Oshi No Ko live action, even if they're a fan of the other characters in the anime, was just captivated by Nanoka's performance as Arimakana, and I think she really embodied Arimakana to life. That kind of like cute, vulnerable, but at the same time tsundere type of character who has so many layers to her. And I'm really happy to see her again jumping off of an earlier work of her and then now seeing her in more starring kind of like role to this level. Now, the live action version doesn't really jump off of the backstory of Ai as how it is in the anime version, because I think that's what they're going to do for the movie. The live action immediately jumps off of, you know, teenage Aqua and Ruby, and we got to know like them trying to form Bikomachi, and Aqua going back into his role as an actor to investigate more of, you know, Ai's background and all of these things. And if you've seen, you know, the anime, you basically know how the entire narrative plays out. And they definitely added some nuances to the ending of it so that there would be more of that build up for the movie. But they really explored and covered a lot of material in the live action version that covered important highlights in both season 1 and 2. Jumping into it without knowing the source material, there might be a little bit of like confusion as to why is Aqua and Ruby the way they are, stuff like that. But I'm sure that most people who watched or tuned into this live action came from the popularity of the source material first. And I think with that said, they did such a good job in terms of pacing this. I love how they converted the Tokyo Blade arc from a stage play to a TV series. I think it fits the format of live action a lot better. I do think that there's a lot of nuances in terms of the characters that are better expressed as live action than the anime and the manga. And I think that's where some, again, nuances of real, because sometimes anime stuff doesn't translate well into live action, but for some reason for this series, the live action, at least in my opinion, kind of like explored more of those emotion or complex relationships and nuances in the character themselves a lot better in live action. It just translated a lot more better in terms of who these characters are and why they're doing the way that they're doing. And it kind of like portrayed a lot more of this complex relationship between Kana, Aqua, and Akane as well. And again, more so the dynamic of Akane and Aqua, because again, as I mentioned, as much as, you know, Akane was portrayed okay, there was still some in the portrayal that I felt like was lacking in terms of dimension. I'm really excited about uh the kind of like the live action movie, because Nino is gonna play the big bad for the series. They kept this role a mystery up until the last episode of the Oshi No Ko live action. I definitely enjoyed this live action version a lot, and obviously like people would have their things to say about it and whatever, but personally I do think that it's entertaining. If you're not a fan of just the anime in general and you're looking for a good watch and you're intrigued by this viral Oshi No Ko anime, the live action is kind of like an interesting jumping point, because again, it really kind of like condenses the story and it into its highlight points without the rest of the other fluff stuff. um and again, the characters are doing a good job in terms of kind of like exploring the nuances of who they're portraying. Um, and yeah, and I think again, overall, I do think that people will have varying opinions about live action works and just works in general that kind of like tap into real life, but at the same time really inject a lot of like fictionality into it. And that's just how creative works are. To me, that isn't an issue. And I'm glad that it's kind of like, to me, a work has done its job if it invites a certain level of discourse that explores more realities than how it's often portrayed. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a completely a good thing or a bad thing. That's just how things are. And I think that's just how creativity is supposed to be, is to provoke conversation. And it's just interesting. And overall, there are some arcs in Oshi No Ko, and if you know, you know, that isn't exactly as favorable. And I know that that's why a lot of people kind of like shifted its gears a little bit from liking it to being put off by it. And if you still don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the whole, you know, Aqua Ruby type of thing. Yeah. But again, like, I hope that they do something about that in the live action. But they did hint at, you know, going a similar direction with Ruby talking about the doctor that way. So I hope that they kind of like shift gears a little bit in the movie, because I feel like that's one of the off-putting parts of it. But again, it explores such an interesting conversation while also being just generally entertaining and having a really cute cast. So yeah. And then last thing that I want to talk about is the way that they marketed this. Is I love it when these types of adaptations or just movies in general that has something to do with music actually produce music or music videos or content that is related to the group that they're trying to portray, and it translates into real life. Like, I remember talking about this in I Will Be Your Bloom, where they performed in like music shows, actually performed in music shows, performed as a unit, created like music videos and stuff like that. And same with the promotion for Oshi No Ko, where they actually had like the girls form Bikomachi and perform in music videos and have YouTube content similar to the anime. I just think it's an interesting way to market these types of things, because it really connects people to the narrative and immerse themselves into thinking that these characters are actually like, you know, just an extension of that world, outside of the actual material that is the series or the movie. But I really enjoy these types of things from a production perspective, from a creative perspective, and just from an audience perspective. And I'm not sure how it is with other people. I know that some people are eating it up, some people have additional thoughts about it, and I don't know, but this is just me wanting to like sit down and talk about, you know, my thoughts on the Oshi No Ko live action adaptation. If you have thoughts about this, let's talk it out down in the comments below as usual. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon in a new one. Bye!